Good evening, Roger.
There, I'm unmuted now, so I can say hi.
Okay.
Hi, Peter. You're muted, Peter.
Hello, Roger. How?
Hi. Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Roger. I don't think I had my sound on.
How you doing?
Good.
I have some kids running around here, so I might be muted a lot.
Okay.
Or I'll stay unmuted, but if it gets to be bad, let me know.
I thought it was an in-person meeting, so it's not.
Pardon?
I thought there was going to be an in-person meeting at the town hall, but there's not.
Well, it is. As it turns out, I had to come down to Boston. So I'm down at my son's house in Sherborne.
Helen and I are live in town hall.
But Neil and Al should be at the town hall with Danielle.
She's here.
I see them.
Don't see Danielle. She's tucked behind them.
I'm at a couple of minutes to go before 6 o'clock, so we can look over the paperwork that we have.
I think you can read the governor disclaimer.
Nope, you don't have to. You don't have to because you're in person.
Right, okay.
Hey, Danielle, I'm unmuted. If it gets to be too noisy at this location, let me know and I'll mute.
Sounds like you have your assistants there.
My assistants,
Yeah,
yeah. A 9-month-old and a 3-year-old.
yeah, I heard it.
Yeah.
Okay, it being 6 o'clock by my. We can look at the minutes or we can postpone looking at them till later. We're open for public comment at any point in time regarding any of these issues. So I'm trying to figure which would be the best one to talk about first. What do you think, Neil? Number 5 or number 4 or?
I think number 5 is one that I'd like to talk about initially, which is the discussion of the auction of town-owned parcel at what I believe to be Zero Road. What's the status of that and what action should we be considering?
I believe the status is that we're going to make a decision on that lot tonight, I do believe, whether we're going to own that, the town is going to take over ownership of that, we're going to put it up for auction. Now, I would like to read a statement on that lot, and I wrote something down about it. It's as follows. I have no problem keeping this lot under town stewardship. As I understand this, the town would own it, and the Conservation Commission would put conservation restriction on this lot in perpetuity. The town cannot do both, own and enforce a restriction. So that's where I am at on this particular lot. Neil, is there anything more to add to that?
I'd support that. I think the question would be, I guess the procedure would be, we would not put it up for sale. We would continue to own it, and we would invite the Conservation Commission to impose a conservation restriction. Am I about that procedure?
I believe so, yes.
We would be happy to do that.
All right, just note that's Ron Vallette providing that. Ron, since we will be transcribing the minutes, I would ask whoever makes a public comment to identify themselves so that we can incorporate your name in the minutes. So that was Ron Vallette. Roger, what's your view on this? Roger, I'm not hearing you.
No audio. I think he scrolls up to I had that problem.
We were asking Roger for his comment, and it appears that his picture is frozen at this point. And he's, Roger, now you got us?
No, I'm here. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now. We didn't hear you before. All right. I'm also advised I did not need this mask at this point. I'm going to take it off. So, my glasses. Roger, the question is before the board is, and I'll put this in the form of a motion, but I thought we'd have a discussion first. Well, let me make a motion, then we can discuss it. I move that the town retain ownership of Zero Shore Road and request that the Conservation Commission prepare a conservation restriction on that property. That's a motion, Alan.
I'll second that.
All right. Roger, your discussion point?
Yes. Why would we retain ownership? Why wouldn't we give it or sell it to the to the land trust or something like that?
Did you get on that?
He's asking why should we continue to own it? Why not give it or sell it to the land trust or to the conservation or some other?
That's what we're doing. The town would own it, otherwise it'd be the other way around. I mean, I spoke with John Mason about the rules and regulations on properties that the town owns. And he said that the town can own something in perpetuity, and that other organizations such as the Conservation Commission can enforce a conservation restriction on it in perpetuity. The town can't do both. But why would we want to keep on owning it? I don't know why we don't need to keep on owning it. I don't see any reason why we should hand it over to the conservation. They got to do something else with it.
Yeah.
Someone else has to maintain the restriction.
Ron has his hand up. Ron?
Either way would work, but we'd want a conservation restriction on it, whether the town kept it or he turns it over to the Conservation Commission. The Conservation Commission would take care of it. But we want to be assured that it couldn't get sold out from under us. So we put some protections for that in there too.
But also the question is, can you both own it and impose a conservation restriction on it? I thought that we had advice from John Mason that one entity can't do both.
Well, if the town kept it, this is Ron again, we'd want a conservation restriction on it to protect it. If you turned it over to the Conservation Commission, we probably wouldn't need a conservation restriction, but we'd want to vote if somebody in the future wanted to try to sell it.
Well,
Is there any disadvantages with the town retaining ownership, or is there any advantages of that? How about from a liability, a personal liability, if somebody gets hurt on that property? Does it matter who owns it?
I can't answer that for the town probably doesn't have an issue. I'm not sure about the Conservation Commission. We do own land up on Perry's Peak there. even though we don't manage it. The BNRC manages it, but it's owned by the Conservation Commission and it's out in the wilderness. So I guess there's no potential liability issues except for the trails running through it. That I can't answer. That's a legal question.
If we need legal, we can get it. I think what we're saying here this evening is that the select board is prepared to withdraw that parcel from public auction, retain it, and explore how it can be put under a conservation restriction in perpetuity. That seems to be what we're agreeing to do.
Would I be allowed to speak here?
Who's asking? Who's? Oh,
Narayan Schroeder, Director of Land Conservation at the Berkshire Natural Resources Council, and I just have something that might be pertinent to this conversation.
Please chime in.
Okay, it's my understanding that, and I would encourage you to check with your town council, but I believe that if land is donated to your Conservation Commission and it's written in the deed itself that it is for conservation purposes, then it would be subject to Article 97 and conserved by doing that. And you wouldn't have to go through the process of putting a conservation restriction on it. Otherwise, John Mason is correct. You typically can't hold both interests because it's said that they merge back together. So that might be it might be a way to do this in a more simple manner, or you want to try and split those interests where one holds the fee interest and one holds the restriction.
If it goes, this chapter 97 that you speak of, that's the town would retain ownership?
The town would retain ownership if it's donated to the town through its Conservation Commission for conservation purposes. You write that in the deed, then that makes it subject to Article 97 in the Massachusetts Constitution, which requires a 2/3 vote to undo, which is the same exact hurdle as to undo a conservation restriction.
Is that the way? Have you seen other small lots like this handled that way?
I believe other towns have done that, but again, I don't want to go too far out on a limb here. I don't work with the Conservation Commission, so I would ask your town council, but I think that would be a way for the town to take ownership without having to go through the conservation restriction process.
I would suggest that we, even though we have a motion in a second, we postpone the ultimate decision to a later date for more information.
Yes, I think that's fine. Do we have to withdraw the motion, Danielle, or can we just postpone the decision?
I would withdraw the motion and then go forward.
All right, in order to follow that advice, I'll withdraw the motion. And I would ask Al to withdraw his second. And we will discuss it with town council. But for those of you who are joining us, it would appear that the select board has made the decision to put that parcel into a permanent conservation restriction, which frankly, several residents have requested that we do. So we are going to move that, get an opinion from town council, and I would suggest we put it on our agenda for the next meeting. There is obviously no rush here, since we are resolved to go forward with that concept.
I withdraw my second.
Next
All right.
item.
Yeah, I like that approach much better.
Okay, fine.
Okay, the next thing talk about.
Danielle, we have a municipal attorney available to us, correct?
Not at the moment, no. We have that, but we don't have a specialized municipal attorney.
I mean, this might be a good opportunity to engage that person.
Okay,
That is, if Beth can help us on it, maybe, I would, Roger, should we ask Beth first if she's got, capability here? Roger?
Yeah, I'm either way.
All right, let's check with Beth, and if she feels we should get a municipal attorney,
Hi, Pat.
we'll do that. What's next, Roger?
Pat's, Pat's trying to say something.
I just wanted to say that Beth has a partner at Kane Hibbard named Sid Smithers, who's like he's very good land attorney, helps BNRC with a lot of our work. So she's got a partner right there who can help if it's something that's outside her bailiwick.
Okay, thank you.
Want to talk about the parking?
Next item on the discussion is parking. Parking on Perry's Peak Road. I saw the memo from Jeff Morris, and he said that the BNRC had the timbers back in the overflow parking lot and the barrier back up. So take it from there, Jeff. You saw them do that. The backhoe went away, etc. I think he's muted.
So you have 2 permits for you?
I'm getting there.
There you go.
So-
Yeah. The excavator was there for a day or so, and it's been removed, and the overflow parking lot's been restructured to be blocked off from the regular parking lot, and that's where it stands right now.
We seem to have two applications here for access. One is the existing, I'm sorry.
Yes, so we asked him to do an application for the existing parking lot so that we can give him a permit for what is currently there. That is what the board requested of him, which is what you have in your file. Roger, do you have that?
Yeah, I have the document that says driveway permit existing new PDF. Yes, which has 2 applications.
Okay, so that's the one that we talked about granting them authority for what they currently have. And then they have the second permit that they are asking permission to expand another 50 by 70 feet on top of that. So do you want to handle the existing one first? And vote whether you want to approve the current driveway, since we do not have an approved driveway permit for that.
Why don't we just deal with one at a time?
Yeah.
I'm a little confused. This says the existing permit.
Well, it says existing dash new.
So,
The name of the document. There's 2 in that document. There's 2 documents.
correct.
There's the first 2 pages is a permit for what's there. The second 2 pages is a permit for what they would like to do.
All right, and the
So
The
this
first
is-
permit
this
that
is
says
the
it's-
existing.
existing
This
is,
is
yeah,
the existing.
I have that.
Yeah.
But in fact, and while that is the existing plot, or that is the existing parking area,
Right.
we're really ratifying something that was done quite some time ago, and in effect, the legal term is non pro tunc, saying that it's now in effect and covers whatever was done in the past, for which we don't seem to have papers. Is that correct?
Correct. So you don't have any signed permits anywhere
Okay.
or actual approval for the driveway permit in any records. So what we said was that if they applied for the current gravel parking area that they have right now, that we would grant them a legal driveway permit for that. And if they wanted to expand it, they would have to then do a second one, which they're doing both tonight.
Okay, understood.
Now, as you can see on the diagram that's shown on the screen right now, you can see there's more than sufficient space there for more than 6 cars. Because you can see in the lower right-hand corner in that red, let's say, square, you can see a car there. So you could very easily envision, 6 cars there would room to spare. And originally, that's what was discussed, was making a parking area for 6 cars. And at that time, we most probably would have had approved that. But we didn't because of a transition of personnel. And it was never followed through. So I think we should approve this existing parking lot for 6 cars as was the original intention. Just to clean up the paperwork.
All right, the only issue I have here is you say 6 cars, but there's no language in the permit that says 6 cars.
Well, there's conditions that we will put on this.
Well, I don't see any unless you're prepared to propose.
Well, that would be part of the discussion. I would suggest that we approve this for 6 cars as it's shown. And some of the other conditions I would like to put on there is to not allow buses to come up there and park in there.
Well, let me ask this question, Roger. If in fact the lot that is existing, and as you pointed out, can handle more than 6 cars, why not just approve the lot that currently exists? Because frankly, the more cars in the parking area, the fewer cars theoretically would be parked, unfortunately, on the street. So if we're just looking at this existing permit, I would suggest we approve the lot and the permit as identified, but not limit it specifically to 6 cars.
I wouldn't be opposed to that, but I would limit it to parking in that red area only.
Well, that's what this permit, the existing permit would say. We'll get to the overflow in the next discussion, but.
Well, I just want to make that a condition on this
Well,
permit.
they're delineated, so there's no question about the size of it. Whatever kind you can fit in there is up to them. They get 7 or 8, that's fine, but it's the original application without the number, the specification of 6 cars that they requested originally. So it's the original proposal without the number of cars specified.
I would also say, Roger, I like your idea of not allowing any buses or, I don't know quite how you describe it, but we don't want buses. Private car parking only.
I have some questions. I don't know when it's appropriate for me to ask. I see Jeff Morris also has his hand up, so I don't want to jump in front of him, but so.
Go right ahead.
Okay. First, it seems like we're sort of getting a mix of the previous permit. So I was asked to produce a drawing showing what's there. So that's what we're looking at on the screen.
Yes.
And that does not take into account the initial language that was written into what I thought was the existing permit. If we're really talking about sort of using some of the language from what I thought was the existing permit, but also this drawing, I feel like that's a little bit, unclear and unfair in that the initial drawing was larger than this. So this is actually much smaller than would have been envisioned in the initial permit, particularly given that what this does is push the parking right up against our barn door. So if you put 6 cars in there, then Josh can't get the tractor out. So really what we're proposing is to move the parking over to the grassy area. The other thing that is in the initial permit is a discussion about overflow parking being to the grassy area And that was clearly understood by the select board at that time, that there would be overflow parking to the east of the improved surface. And so I wouldn't want to see that, our ability to do that diminished. And then one further question just on the buses is,
I want to comment on that initial permit. That initial permit was only for a sign. That other language that was in that permit was superfluous.
well, okay, I mean, so then we shouldn't be discussing that at all, I suppose, because it was being sort of brought in, that language from the initial permit. And as relates to buses, is that just for BNRC, or is that for Perry's Peak Road, no buses? I mean, can you really just limit our ability to what, you know, if we want to bring school kids up there, we can't do that? That seems a little, I don't know that doesn't seem right to me, but I guess we, you know, I'll leave it as a question.
My question is, who prepared this site plan? I thought it was the BNRC.
They did.
The one we're looking at right now is prepared by the BNRC. If it's not the one that confirms the existing lot or what you think was granted, then we'd like to look at a different site plan than the one that's up on the screen.
Well, I did provide you with that last week, I think, but that's not what I was asked for here. So that's not what's in front of me. I can certainly pull it up. But
What you asked for. Last week you asked for a permit for what they have currently right now, if you could approve it. Not what anything had to do with 2013. You asked them to come back with a permit for what they currently have as a parking area, and you would approve that. And if they wanted to expand it, they would have to do a second driveway permit. What we said to them was, we don't want you to give us a permit of what you thought you were approved for in 2013, because you were never approved for it.
right.
So that's what he did. He's giving us a permit application for what is currently there for parking, so that he can actually get an approved permit to be allowed to have cars there, because right now he has nothing.
Well,
The second permit that you have in front of you shows what he wants it to be.
well, I would tell you the second permit.
It's another 3,500 square feet.
Right. And the additional overflow to the east.
Well, the overflow is essentially, the overflow is just turned into improved gravel surface. So we would have room to get in discussing this with other BNRC members, we think this would get sort of 98 to 99% of all cars off Perry's Peak Road and into our parking lot. And we think that's the right solution here.
Well, we have some residents here who I think may not agree with you.
I gather that.
I'd like to make a comment about what you see on the screen as the designated parking area.
This is Jeff Morse.
Yes, this is Jeff Morse. Sorry.
Please identify yourself.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's Jeff Morse. If you're going to approve that area, I'd like to see the designation of where the 6 parking spaces are supposed to be, because according to everything I've read about designing parking lots for the public, there has to be a clear right of way from the entrance to the parking lot all the way to the garage doors, which takes up a considerable amount of that space. And once you plot that in there, what are you left with? I mean, yeah, you could probably fit 15 cars in there if you really packed them in, and they do. We've seen that. Doesn't mean it's safe, doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean emergency vehicles can get in there when they need to, doesn't mean that BNRC can even get to their equipment if they need to. So I think just approving this kind of raw diagram without any delineation of where you expect to park 6 cars does not make sense to me. And I just say one other thing about parking on the street. Parking on the street's already not allowed. That has nothing to do with BNRC. That's a town regulation.
We know, I know that, we know that. And we are well aware of the concern of the people who live along Perry's Peak Road. The point about allowing more cars, and we're not yet to that discussion, in an area that's identified as a parking lot, theoretically would reduce the amount of overflow parking on the street, which, while prohibited, we have no effective enforcement capability. We can put signs up, but it appears that people park there anyway, and that's a topic for discussing the expanded parking area, which is the proposed permit.
Neil, have you seen the size? Have you seen the size of the no parking signs that are on Perry's Peak Road, right by that barn right now? They're the size of a 3x5 card.
Well,
I think it could be more effective.
we could remedy that.
Yeah.
There's the larger issue of the size and extent of the public use of this reserve.
Right.
And parking is part of the problem, possibly part of the solution, but there are other issues that we probably should be talking about. At the same time, we discuss expanding the existing parking. And they have to do, and Roger mentioned them, or I know he's thinking about it, and that is some of the event parking, the event that take place where there is significant promotion about viewing the birds or fireflies up on the reserve, that can bring substantial number of cars and people to the property, where there's just no effective way, even if we expanded the parking as requested, we still end up with cars on Perry's Peak Road. So at some point, we probably have to discuss that as well. But let's go back to the existing.
The effective way to manage that is to not allow it.
Well,
You know, the whole idea, it would seem to me, is to try to meet the what the objective in the vision statement is to have a quiet and peaceful nature walk. And you can only do that when you limit the number of people, in my opinion.
well, let me ask a question, and that is, when the BNRC announces a public gathering, which we know will bring traffic and people to the area, are they not required to get a special permit from the select board before such an event takes place? As far as I know, up to this point,
Everyone else in town is.
I can't actually speak to whether or not we have done that, because I don't know the answer to whether or not when we do the bobolink walk, if that gets a special permit or not. But I can certainly get back to you with an answer on that. That would not be
yes,
something.
have you applied for a special permit? Because I don't think we have any record of a permit being applied for and granted for that type of an event, which is calculated to bring 30, 40, 50 cars to the property rather than the normal use of the property as well promoted in your website.
We certainly wouldn't be opposed to applying for a permit to do events. So I don't see that as an issue. If we haven't done it, it's because we weren't aware that we needed to. Not that that's an excuse, but
This is Mackenzie Greer. I could speak to that if helpful. There was
Mackenzie Greer, she's with the
yeah. So this is Mackenzie Greer, BNRC. There was an event, not this past 4th of July weekend, but the one before 2018, or 2019, it would have been, that did bring a very large crowd. And that was really not anticipated. It was a much larger crowd than we've ever had. It was just an issue of an event going on social media and being spread much too far. And so immediately after that, we dialed way back on any events at Hollow Fields. We rarely have anything special there. I mean, certainly during COVID, we haven't had anything anywhere, but after conversations with neighbors on the road and others, we really haven't had events at Hollow Fields. There was one that was hosted by another organization, unbeknownst to us, this fall or late summer, and we spoke with them, addressed it, and we've really worked to dial those way back. And we did speak with Danielle at that point, and she gave us some parameters about what would be what would cross a threshold of requiring a special permit, and we've been keeping that in mind. Certainly most of the events that we've had have been in conjunction. There have been either a guided walk, which is relatively small, and events in conjunction with the Richmond Land Trust, like the Pie-Nic, which brings a lot of Richmond residents. And those in particular do wind up expanding that envelope a little bit, and is something that's been enjoyed by a lot of Richmond residents, and we've been able to manage the flow for that singular event.
Well, I can't speak for the other members of the board, but in my view, events, even like the Pie Picnic, which is frequented pretty much just by Richmond residents, but certainly the Bobolink and certainly the Firefly and some of the other events that have taken place there, I think you should come before us, seek a special permit, explain your promotion, explain the attendance anticipated, the traffic issues, the parking issues, and allow us to review it, have a public hearing, and in our judgment, either approve it or disapprove.
okay.
I have another suggestion. I was spoken by Roger that to allow no buses. But then again, having second thoughts on it, maybe that's not such a good idea to just allow buses. And maybe you have an event like they schedule, like the Bobolink thing or the Firefly viewing, whatever it is, that you do a shuttle bus service from some parking lot, other places like down by the town hall or something, so there are no cars up there. Shuttle only. Perhaps that would work better. I'm not sure about that, but that might be something to consider.
That's a fair comment. And school buses, I think we'd all like to see the reserve used for school children. So I think past exception for school buses, something we should consider.
Jeff, you have something to add?
Yeah, I just like for you all to consider a different way of looking at this. It's been our observation that on the weekends, every car that comes up here has more than one person in it. And probably if you really were to do the numbers, you would average something around 3, possibly 4. So you have 10 cars up here, that's 40 people. That to me represents, 10 households of people up here. Well, there aren't 10 houses up here. There aren't 10 households of people up here, but they drive up here and they climb all over this mountain like a human anthill, right in our front yard and in the backyard of the Caligaris. So it's not just a question of parking cars. It's a question of managing the number of people who are going up and down the road and crawling across the landscape. And it's very disruptive to this community right here that used to be a dead end road. When I first moved here, there were maybe 3 trips a day up and down this road with somebody in a car. And it's way out of control.
Hundreds.
It's way more than that right now. So if you look at the, each car as being a household full of people, that kind of changes what you're really looking at here.
Well, Jeff, I can appreciate what you're saying. We have that to a certain extent on East Road in terms of the number of cars that park along East Road and the number of people who walk up and down the road itself. But we're looking for a way, short of asking the BNRC either to close their facility, which I'm not prepared to do, or enforce some form of restriction to accomplish a limitation on the number of people. Now, we had the same issue at the beach. We had a discussion about how can we limit the number of people at the beach during the COVID crisis. And we eventually came to the point that we really can't be counting people. The practical solution was to count cars, which is something at least, if you can't regulate it, at least you can put a certain amount of limitation on parking and so forth. So I don't know how we or the BNRC, and I'll get to Mrs. Morris in just a minute, can enforce a people restriction, but we are making an effort to consider and discuss some form of limiting the total number of people, and we do it by saying, yes, 6 cars, 10 cars, 15 cars, whatever it is. And yes, that would end up with 30 or 40 people. But to say you're going to do it by people means you're going to have someone there counting how many people are in the car and saying, no, we're over the limit now on people. Yes, there's a parking space, but only 3 of you can get out and walk up the hill. It's just not practical to try to limit it by people.
I'd like to say something. One solution, one immediate thing we could do right now is not have BNRC create an overflow parking lot this weekend. We have another nice weekend coming upon us. And yet again, we're going to wake up and say, oh God, we already have 100 to 200 cars a day coming up Perry's Peak Road on a nice weekend. And when you add a parking space lot that can accommodate another 15 to 20 more cars, more than what we're currently accommodating, then that adds double that amount of cars on the weekend. So we could probably start with not having the overflow parking lot this weekend. I'm sure that my neighbors would agree with me on that.
I'd like to speak, but I see Jamie's ahead of me.
Well,
as well.
I'm not on that exact same topic. I just wanted to add to what Jeff said earlier, and just put my 2 cents in. I just feel like our way of life on this street has been completely altered in the last couple of years by the sheer number of cars that drive up this road. A lot of people are rude. A lot of people just, drive on our property. And, in talking with BNRC, they've always said, oh, well, this location is different for us. We don't have any other location that's in a residential area. So I'd like to ask someone from BNRC to tell me, what exactly are you doing differently at this location, since it is in a residential area, that you don't do at your other areas? Because it is in a residential area and because you're destroying our way of life here.
Okay, well, I can try to speak to that. I first want to speak to the parking situation. There's been, Jeff pointed out that you can't really park 6 cars in what's existing and still have the barn function as a barn and get the tractor in and out nicely. And our goal for this reserve, which is at this point, it's a reserve that includes town land, includes land owned by the Richmond Land Trust, and is over 450 acres, I think, at this point. All of which could have been developed into house lots, or a lot of which could have been developed into house lots and isn't. So there could have been a subdivision up in those fields that would have also generated a lot of car trips, and that is something to consider.
But it didn't happen.
What we're proposing here is to put a parking lot that is a reasonable size for a reserve of this nature, of a 450-acre reserve. It's a lot that could easily hold 10 or 15 cars, which we think we'll get. And we're not talking about increasing visitation or increasing our, trying to get more people here. We're trying to get the existing people, the people that are coming now, off the road. And if we, I'm not able to share this screen, but if you saw if this were approved and then we go to the next one that shows what is proposed, it basically extends to the east through where the sort of overflow parking is now, with a gravelled surface, and then we could put split rail fence around that, which is what we typically do. We could increase the no parking signs and have bigger signs, and have signs that say, if the lot is full, please go somewhere else. I don't think that's fair or appropriate when the lot fills up after 4 cars are parked there and somebody's trying to get the tractor out. That's not enough for this. So if we're allowed to expand the lot and really make a sensible size lot here that'll get the existing traffic off the road, put a split rail fence around it. That split rail fence will help us direct the people from the car to the trailhead, where there can be signs about what's allowed and what isn't allowed, and there can be bigger signs on the road. And then you can get into a situation where I think it would be more manageable, because if people are parking on the road, then I think you could ticket them, or we could make them leave or whatever. But at this point, I don't see how you do that with this small lot. And so, yeah, I guess that's what I wanted to say.
What about answering my question?
What do we do different here? Well, I don't know exactly how to answer that, Jamie. I mean, this is a public road, and BNRC owns several hundred acres here in partnership with the town, that is held for the purpose of passive recreation for people to enjoy. And we're just trying to do that. That's what we do. So I'm trying to do it and do it well, and not getting, keeping the parking lot small to force everybody to park on the road so that we can, continue to have issues, seems like a really bad way to go here. So I'm trying to come up with a solution that'll help relieve the traffic. People can pull in, park, not back up into each other and drive around in circles or whatever is going, or turn around in the Morse's driveway. And then if that continues to be a problem, once we've got a reasonable size lot there, then I think you can come in and say, okay, these people have to, get ticketed or whatever if they park on the road.
Hi, this is Christian Hansen at 81 State Road in Richmond. I'd just like to weigh in on the discussion right now. And I support both the BNRC and also the property owners in the area. I think what BNRC what they're doing is phenomenal. Like, it's great. That's what we should be doing. That's what we want to be doing in Richmond, is preserving the property. I think it's great. And to be able to expand the parking lot to take traffic off the road is exactly what we should be encouraging, so that it's not an inconvenience to the residents there, which might be being inconvenienced right now. So hopefully there's a way around this, but I completely support BNRC. I think that's great to preserve the property. And also I think we can do that to respect the property rights of the owners in the area.
The other thing I wanted to ask, and that we have asked BNRC for, also we've spoken to the town about it, is finding another way in. Finding another way in off of 41, putting a parking lot in down there, which would take the traffic off our road completely. It would give BNRC the ability to have as many cars as they want, have whatever functions they want. And they said they were going to look into it. I've never heard anything about it. And as far as I know, they have not tried to find another solution besides enlarging the parking lot. We've asked to try to do something else to get off the road completely.
Our board members did just lead a hike and a hiking group of 10 folks in from 41. So we are exploring that and learning about that. But it is a very different experience to walk 2 miles to get to the field versus to walk up into the meadow. And I think a lot of people.
2 miles?
Would actually be
41.
closer. If you,
You know,
from 40,
from-
it would actually be
from-
closer.
Off of 41,
Yeah.
From 40,
from the cemetery.
Off of Route 20. My
No,
mistake.
from 41 by the cemetery.
Right.
Very short walk. You'd come into the lower lot.
Misunderstood. You misunderstood.
in fact, it's a shorter walk.
It's private property. I can't force anybody to sell.
Have you asked? That's what I'm asking.
Well,
Has anyone ever looked into it from BNRC?
We have looked into it, and I just don't like to, those are, it's private property, and those are private conversations. I can't, yes, we have looked into it. It's unfortunately gone nowhere.
Let me, can I suggest we back up a half step here? And I would like to see us approve the special permit application for the existing parking lot or parking facility, which can hold somewhere between 6 or 8 cars. And yes, it does abut the door to the barn, but this is what ostensibly was granted quite a few years ago, and it's a starting point. I think whatever we do, we're not going to take steps to eliminate parking at the facility. So I'm suggesting we approve
Driveway permit.
the driveway permit and the existing parking as identified in the application, which is on your screen. And then we go to the discussion on expanding the parking lot, which is a second request from the BNRC. Does everyone understand what I'm suggesting? Because at this point, no one attending this meeting has said we should eliminate BNRC parking at Hollowfields. And there is an existing lot. It's been used for the past 5, 6, 7 years. So I'm proposing we adopt what is really in existence right now with the cut to allow the street cut. And then we can go to the second issue of whether we should approve an expanded parking lot, which would include the overflow area to the east. Does everyone understand what I'm trying to do this in a practical approach?
Neil, this is Jeff Morris. I understand what you're asking for, and I'm not totally opposed to it. But I would still like to see a plot plan that identifies the 6 parking spots that you're going to put in this area. Can you say 6 to 8? Well, show me the 6 or 8 that are going to be there and show me that it can actually.
Jeff, would you be happy with chalk marks on the ground and lots of signage? I mean, for practical purposes, if there's 7 cars, if there's 6 cars or 5 cars, this is what has been in existence for the last 5, 6, 7 years.
Right.
So all we're doing is just approving what in effect is what everyone has been living with.
Right. Well, we've been living with a parking lot that ranges from, 6 to 15 cars. And, I'd like to see where you think the 6 cars are going to be put there safely so that everybody can get what they want out of here. Everybody can have safe egress and exit, and can get to the doors of the barn there, can have a safe fire lane around the building. And I don't see that yet.
You want to see the
I
parking lot?
don't want to see it marked out on the ground up here. I just want to see it on a piece of paper that says, here are the dimensions, here's where the 6 cars can fit before you approve it. And secondly, if you're going to put this lot in here, I believe the bylaws call for attractive screening, of which there is none.
Yeah, Jeff,
That would be one of the conditions.
Yes. isn't attractive.
So I think you need to see a better plot plan before you approve this.
I'm sick of looking at people in the parking lot, quite frankly.
Not sure, unless you want the lot paved and marked, I'm not sure how or who enforces. There is no 6-car limit in the application. There is just the plot plan.
No, but there's a 6-car limit in terms of geography. How much space do you have? How many spaces can you safely fit in there according to, modern parking diagrams? I've looked at this and it's hard to tell how you can fit them in there. And I'm not asking you to mark them on the pavement or mark them in the gravel or anything like that, but just show me on the diagram, you're gonna be able to park 6 cars this way, 6 cars that way. Because whoever comes into that parking lot.
I'm looking at the same diagram you are. There's 1 car there. And if you just eyeball the 1 car in the same configuration going to the west, 1, 2, it would appear to me that 6 cars could fit along the line, which is on the south end of the.
It would appear, and I don't think it's too much to ask to put it on paper.
Well, okay, so I'd like to speak to this because I feel like, again, we're getting caught between, I was told that there was no permit for this. So there is no permit. So I don't know where the 6 cars is coming from. Forget the old permit is what I was told. The old permit was a sign permit. So there is no permit. So there is no discussion of 6 cars. We didn't get approval for 6 cars. We didn't get approval for anything in that previous permit, apparently, other than the sign. So I was asked to come forward with what is on the ground, and that is what this is. There doesn't have to be 6 cars. There's just what there is. That's what I was asked to do. So there it is. There's what's there, and that's what the permit is for. Is what's there. It's not a number of cars. It's that space. The 6 cars was in an open.
I'm not suggesting that the permit limit the number of cars. I'm just suggesting that we approve what has in fact been the practice and the lot area that has been in existence, as far as I know, from before I was on the board. We have to start somewhere.
Right.
And I'm suggesting we just approve what exists today. We can have a much larger discussion on the proposal to expand the lot. But I'm just, this is what we live with. There is no limit in the permit on number of cars. From a practical point of view, it appears that 6 to maybe 8 cars if you park them parallel on the north end of the lot. But I think just from a sheer move this discussion along, I'm proposing we approve a permit that appears to do nothing but ratify the practice that has been in effect for the last 6 to 8 years.
I just wanted to say one quick thing. I agree with that, but I want, I know that we're going to speak to enlarging the parking lot after, but I want to understand that if you grant that permit, that means that's the lot. And on the weekends, they can enlarge it to this larger space just because they want to. That permit is for that existing lot, period. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's my understanding. I checked with Roger and Alan.
That would be my understanding, and there would be conditions on that lot where there would be screening. As you're looking at that picture, the line that's on the right, the line that's parallel with the Caligari property, there would be screening along that line, and there'd be screening on the line along the road also.
There is a bylaw.
That would be what I would recommend as conditions, plus the condition of no buses.
So Neil, what you're proposing is we approve this, you guys approve this lot, and it doesn't matter how many cars they get crammed in there. Whether it creates a public safety hazard or not, doesn't matter.
Well, the problem is we can put a limitation in, but who enforces?
Well, I'd have to enforce it if it was my property. Why doesn't BNRC have to enforce it if it's theirs?
There was no place in the permit for me to write the number of cars. I mean, it wasn't even asked, so I didn't even think about that. I mean, the permit asks,
Right.
the permit is a driveway permit, not a parking lot permit. It's about the driveway. So, it's as much about the curb cut, I suppose, as anything, not the parking lot. And I don't think there's I didn't see anything that would stop us from parking on the grass. I mean, we don't have to have a parking lot. We just need a driveway. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's maybe the real situation.
You're parking in the grass now.
What's that?
The application that you have that you applied for is a driveway permit / off-street parking. If you look under our bylaws, they go hand in hand.
Yep.
So what you're applying for is both the driveway permit as well as off-street parking. So if you look at the other section of the bylaws that are for off-street parking, I believe I emailed that to you. I don't have it off the number off the top of my head, but under there, it also is a requirement for screening from the roadway and the butter. So, I think where the 6 cars is coming from with the initial documents that we found back in 2013 that we don't have any permits for. So it doesn't necessarily matter what it said then. But then when you were applying for one that was never approved, it was the thought of having only 6 cars with overflow parking to the west of the barn, not the east, to the west of the barn in the grassy area. And there was a request for a waiver of screening, but there was notes on the original site plan that showed where screening would go. But then, like I said, there is nothing in the minutes and there is nothing in our records that show any actual approval of any kind of request to avoid any kind of screening or requirements to add the screening or requirements for 6 cars, which leads us back to where we are right now, with is trying to get you approval for what you currently have and to be able to fit you in with the current bylaws.
The 6 cars just came out of discussion, which BNRC said would be more than adequate for what they were planning to do there.
So Roger, this is Pat Callahan. Can I say something? So it was more adequate in 2013, but the situation has changed. And I understand why you want to get past this first step, Neil, but if we could talk about a plan to put the right size lot with a good fence and screening along, each side of the parking lot with a place where people come from the parking lot in, where we can have really good signage to try to control things, we could really improve the situation, how it looks and how it works, instead of just continuing the frustration. I mean, it may still be frustrating, but it wouldn't be as frustrating as it is today. So it just seems like we really need to move at some point here to whether it's tonight or another time, to an actual plan of what it could look like, what kind of fencing, what kind of screening, where we could make the right kind of lot that doesn't hold 8 cars. Jeff Morse is right about that. 8 cars is a lot in there. You make a lot that's really the right size to hold 12 or 15 or whatever the number is we decide, and do it right. So it's protected and screened and well signed.
Pat, with respect, I think that's the discussion we should have with the proposed special permit. And all I'm suggesting is the existing situation we have to consider that first.
Understood, Neil, but I don't want us to start putting screening requirements on this property. You see what I'm saying? We don't want to screen and fence this little lot. That doesn't necessarily make sense. I just think we just want to be careful of putting those restrictions in this approval.
That's where I was going. If we're going to talk about restrictions, this was about permitting what is existing. There's what's existing. If the board would, would like to approve that and then move on, then it seems then we could get talking about what the restrictions are.
Well, the only way we can control the excessive number of cars is to discourage people from going there. And I don't think it's a good idea to encourage more cars by making more spaces there. If they want to make more spaces someplace where it's less destructive to the neighborhood, that's what should be pursued. And even that is not necessarily the best situation. Quite frankly, these events where there's multiple people, I don't know how they could possibly be enjoyed with all the noise that creates. You know, wildlife in nature walks are not enjoyable when you have 40 and 50 people. There's no way you can hear anything or enjoy anything or see anything.
So Roger, we haven't been using this property for big walks like that. I realized there was one in 2019, but I think that's what Mackenzie just said, is this is not being used for big walks at this
Come
point.
on out on a Saturday, any given Saturday.
It's a big weekend
Come on
every
out.
weekend.
Check it out.
I'm not sure I agree with you, Roger. 40 people spread out over Hollow Fields Trail is one situation. If they come separately, it's another situation. They all come in one vehicle. But I'd still like to get back to simply ratifying, and I agree that if we impose screening on the east side at this time, we would in effect be making a decision on the proposed use of the lot by expanding it for overflow. So I'm inclined just to approve the existing site diagram, site plan, and the driveway permit, as Danielle keeps reminding me. And then I think much of the discussion that we've been having really relates to the application by BNRC to expand the parking area. But I think initially, we probably should approve what has been the practice and the usage for the past 4 or 5 years, and simply go forward with that. That's my thinking. It's not making a judgment on all the other issues we have been talking about.
Is that a motion?
I don't think you should allow approval of this plot plan here without some definition as to where you think these cars are going to park. Because looking at it right there, you could fit 16, 18 cars in there. Does that mean it's safe? No. Does that mean it's workable? No. And so I don't think you can pass something that's open-ended like that and say, hey, here it is, you park here. There's no limitation on the number of cars.
Yeah, but the practice has been going on for years. You know that.
Hey, what about me? My family's lived here. My family's lived, excuse me. My family's lived here
no more than 6 cars.
My family's lived here since 1916.
No, I'm asking you a question. Should we put a sign up that says no more than 6 cars allowed?
Yes. You should.
You know, there's another situation that is similar to this. Has anyone ever brought their pet to the Berkshire Veterinary Hospital on West Housatonic Street? They have signs in front of the parking place. No, they're not delineated. There are signs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. And that's where you park your car in front of it. Would that make sense for them to do that? To put a sign up in front of each potential parking place rather than trying to park out something with gravel or whatever? And then when you know that this is your parking place, you're going to come there and park in number 3 or 2 or whatever is available. If there's nothing available, you leave. Maybe that's a better way to think on it, because they have a pretty good success rate up there, because there's a lot of people bring their pets up there in the course of the day, and they each have a sign in front of the place the vehicle goes. Park here, parking place number 1, 2, or 3, or whatever. Maybe that's something to look at.
But just an observation. If we're going to approve what is currently there.
Wherever that's coming from, could you mute your line just for a minute?
if we're going to potentially approve another modification to it or an enlargement of it, it doesn't necessarily make sense to put restrictions on what is currently there. Because then you could put all those restrictions on what they're proposing, which we have right now, which they're asking us to look at. So what we had said to them last week was if they gave us a permit for what they currently have, we would approve it. Because that's what should have been done back in 2013. But that is what they have come back to us with, is a permit of what currently exists and also a permit to try to extend it. So the first step would be to approve a permit so they actually legally have a driveway permit for what they currently have. And then to review the larger proposed site plan that they have in front of you as well. And then you can put restrictions on there. I know that we have reviewed the larger one, and our highway superintendent also has concerns about the size of the proposed one, that we are not there yet, regarding traffic up and down the road. But the first step would be to approve what is currently there, like we had told them that we would.
Thank you, Danielle. You said it better than I did in terms of what I was trying to do. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the application for access to a public way driveway permit, which is marked existing on my copy and on your copy. I'm moving to do that.
And I'll second that. Now, I need to have a report. Are all those in favor?
Well, there's more I would like to include as a condition that there's no bus parking there.
No what?
Bus parking, no bus parking.
No buses.
Would that include school bus?
Yes, a bus, any bus.
Oh,
I don't know what to say about that, because like I said, I think they could actually relieve some of the traffic on the road if it would allow buses for special events, you know?
Okay, I can't see Holly.
Oh, you can't.
Yeah.
She does have her hand here.
Holly, you got comment?
I do. I think it would be a shame to disallow school buses. There's no, I would go with what Neil is saying and approve what the existing parking lot. You don't have to put any restrictions on it now. You can put restrictions on what they want to do to expand it. But to deny there's never been buses going up there, have there? Has that been an issue? And if not, why put a restriction on that? I can understand to some extent, but not to disallow the school buses from Richmond to take those children up there. That would be a shame.
Or any school bus.
Or any school buses. That's all I have to say.
I was thinking more like tour buses, but bus is a bus.
I'm opposed to the buses and school buses on this particular application. I don't think it's a good idea to take. I think we're gonna go back to Neil and Danielle, so we're looking at the original situation, original proposal, which is what is before us at this point in time. That's what we need to look at. And if there's something else coming on, which there will be, that's the time to look at buses. That's. So, do you withdraw that, Roger, that condition?
Well, it wasn't a motion, it was a,
It was just discussion, you know, and it sounds like it's not a good idea. Although I think it is a good idea, but you know, that's just my idea.
well, I certainly agree to ban school buses. So then we get into a definition of what kind of a bus we would approve or not approve. And if it's a small bus, it's okay, but if it's a big bus, it's not. So I think adding a condition about buses creates more confusion and more possibility of and frankly, not being able to enforce it in any case. So,
Well, buses and people was the big consternation that led to our special event permit bylaw. So I guess we can manage it through that. If people apply for a permit as opposed to just do an event without getting, they just do it because they think it's a by right thing.
Well,
I don't know how you manage that.
special event.
NRC will not be doing any more big events here. I think almost across the board, but certainly, working with the Richmond Land Trust, if we were to do the Pinic, we wouldn't do anything at this point without talking with the select board. We know now, that this is an issue. We did have one event. I don't remember when it was. It's not my, part of what I do, where we bused some people to the property. I think it was some inner city kids got taken up there, and it was actually quite a wonderful event. But at the same time, I understand that, we don't have to do that here, and we know now, and we also know that it requires a special permit. So I think that's a great comment. I think that's how you limit the buses, is know that BNRC will be applying for special permits if we're going to do anything, and if that, whatever that is going to require a bus, then you can say no at that point.
Okay, a motion's before us. It's been approved. A motion's been approved and seconded. Mostly to clean up the paperwork, as I understand the original thought was, that was what we wanted to do, to clear up what was already agreed to 6 years ago or whatever the time was. So, having said that, it's time for us to vote on this issue.
all right, Pilson, aye.
Hanson, aye.
Manzolini, aye.
Okay.
Now,
Propose.
we promised everybody we move to the proposed. And you got,
Yep.
hold on a second, we're gonna put the proposed plot plan or site plan.
Oh, you gotta use this?
Hold on 1 second. It doesn't-
We're working on it. All right.
Okay.
Okay, the proposal is now on the screen. All of you can now see what that amounts to. So let's talk about this. The object here obviously is to take traffic off of the road and park it in a larger parking area so that the road is not loaded with cars, etc., among other things. However, it sure causes a lot of problems for the neighbors. So let's get into the discussion on this here and see how far where this is going to go. Okay, who wants to pick up the ball and run with it?
Well, maybe I should start, since it's my drawing, and I'll just give a little explanation, and then comments can go from there. How's that sound? All right, so you can see here there's a light gray. Oh, I'm sorry. Right next to the car. I was using my cursor, but I realized I'm not sharing this. Right next to the car, there's a light gray line. That's from the previous drawing of the existing lot, just so you know. And that from the barn door to there is about 70 feet. So now it says 145 feet. So that takes you to the easternmost corner which is approximately 25 feet off our boundary with the Caligari line. And then on around from there, leaving also about 25 feet to the road. The width of the existing driveway is about plus or minus 14 feet as drawn and as existing. So that grassy area that we are currently using as, quote, overflow parking would have an improved surface. We would propose a split rail fence roughly around where the red line is, and then screening along Perry's Peak Road and along in that 25-foot area between us and the Caligari property, and could go around the corner too as needed. So I guess that, to me, that allows room for what we're thinking is most days that would cover every car that goes there. And, according to the bylaw, the off-street parking should be effective, should be sized appropriate for that. And I think this would do it. It wouldn't, we can't make any guarantees that there wouldn't be a busy Saturday where somebody parked on the road. But I think what we would do is with this, we would agree to, do some sign improvements. And, if people want to number the parking, like whatever, we'll look at whatever kind of solution might go along with this. But I think this is a more appropriate size parking area for this reserve, and would get pretty much everybody off the road. Okay.
Mr. Schroeder, this is Jeff Morse. At what number do you think the character of the neighborhood has changed when you bring people up here?
Well, Jeff, I understand that, that the traffic there is
I'm not talking about traffic. I'm talking about the number of people crawling across the landscape.
I mean, that's an individual, it's an individual thing. Some people might be fine with
all right,
one number and some not. So I don't know.
I recognize that I'm an incumbent resident here. My family's been here since 1926, and there's been more people up here than since God left that property outdoors. And it has definitely changed the character of the neighborhood here. And negatively, as far as I'm concerned. You may look at it as positively, but we live here. And, as Jenny Hensel said several months ago, I didn't buy this property knowing that BNRC was there. But BNRC bought that property knowing I was here. And you've moved into this neighborhood and changed the character of the neighborhood to the point where I think my property values are less than they would be. You mentioned having houses up here. At this point, we'd rather have 4 or 5 houses up there than have 40 or 50, 60, 80 people crawling across that landscape every day that we don't know. If we had 5, 6 houses up there, at least we know who was going up and down this hill. So as far as I'm concerned, this has definitely changed the character of the neighborhood in a derogatory way.
I wanted to bring up something that we haven't touched on yet, because it's, as usual, continually been about number of cars and getting cars off the road. I don't abut the property. I live further down the road. So for me, the issue is the traffic. The sheer number of cars that go by here on a weekend is incredible. My life has changed. I used to meet up with my neighbor on the road. We'd walk our dogs would play. We cannot do that anymore because of the traffic. And I have asked the town before to find out how much money they have spent on road repair. Because last year, this year actually in the spring, there was a huge, I believe, $60,000 road repair in front of my barn because of all the traffic from people going to BNRC, destroying the road earlier in the year. So BNRC is not a taxpayer. So who is going to be paying for this road to be repaired? And you're talking about buses coming up here potentially.
No, we're not.
This is just increased traffic on our road, which is, when we bought this land and built our house here, there were 3 people beyond us. I never expected there would be cars streaming past my house every day.
Well,
I'm on a dead end street with 3 people beyond me.
and the reserve was there when you bought the house, and it is not being.
And it was not like this. There were very few people up there, very few. And then it started to
Very
get
few.
advertised and it started to have functions be held, which let more people know about it. Now it was just in the New York Times, and half the cars that come up here are out of state. They're not even residents.
To identify, it's Jamie Grossman who was making those comments for the record. For the
Yes, sorry. So any comment from the town on the amount of money that's been spent on road repair, or how, our taxpayer dollars are gonna have to go to fixing the road?
Keith can talk to that.
Our highway superintendent is on the call.
Peter?
Yeah, Pete Beckwith here. The road project that we did cost $8,000 to upgrade that one section, try to get rid of the mud. There's another section I want to do, but the road was it was a cow path that has just been gravel added to. There's never been any real design to. We're trying to update things as we go along, but it's a work in progress.
This is Jen Morse here. I've lived on this road for 29 years, and this is last year I had to buy my first SUV ever. I've always driven a sedan. I've never had to drive an SUV. But last year was the first year I finally had to succumb. I mean, I'm enjoying driving it, but it was finally the first year I was not able to get up and down my road because of BNRC traffic, which was a considerable expense to me.
I believe BNRC closed its reserve when it got muddy last year, and there was muddy roads throughout the Berkshires. It's not just Perry's Peak Road. And to blame BNRC for mud season is really above and beyond. I just think that that's not helpful.
That's excuse me, Jeff Kelligary.
Yeah, hi Jeff.
No, your reserve was not closed. The only way you're going to close that reserve is by putting a chain across the driveway. That was open. People were driving on the Grossman's property, on Lori Combs' property. They were doing everything they could do to get to Hollow Fields and hike. You never close that off. Don't sit there and say you did. You should have, but you didn't.
I think Mackenzie Greer is going to jump on here because I believe she did speak with the town, and I do believe we closed it. But I don't.
There was a road closed sign at the bottom of the hill, which a lot of your hikers ignored. But the only way you could have truly closed that off was close off the parking lot, and you didn't do that.
Yeah, the only I think the road was closed over the weekend, and we didn't know that it had been closed, and so we only learned on Monday at Jeff Morse's communication that it had been closed. So we took steps at that point, and we checked the traffic after that, and it decreased, but also the weather did improve. So we were in touch with Pete Beckwith at that point and talked about some strategies when there is a serious mud issue of the steps that we can take and communications that we can have from the town to us and us to the town, so that we can so that we know that the road needs to be closed and we can take those steps. It's a good point, Jeff, that we can, make sure that that is also chained off if it wasn't. That I'm not aware of.
Yeah, it's a simple solution. You just put a sign at Hollow Fields parking lot saying parking lot's closed.
Unfortunately, though, that still brings cars up the road. So they have to get there and then they have to turn around. So what we did was add a sign at the bottom of the road as well. And so we tried to address it in that moment, and we'll work on that certainly in future mud seasons.
Just want to make one quick comment about the sign at the end of the road. The day that happened, my husband happened to be down at the end of the road, and people came, hikers, and asked him, "Oh, does that apply to me? Can we go up to hike?" I mean, it's just ridiculous. People just go right around the sign. It does absolutely nothing.
Well,
I've got one more question. The overflow parking, which BNRC has opened up the last 2 weekends, is that going to continue through the season, or have they been told that they aren't allowed to do that, or where do we stand on that?
Well, my understanding is at this point, we're discussing this. I don't know that the overflow parking here is proposed to have an improved surface and not.
No, I'm sorry. I meant the last 2 weekends, you put up a sign that said overflow parking, and you opened up that proposed parking lot, which from what I understand, you weren't supposed to do. So my question is, going forward, until you get the proper permits, are you going to try to continue to do that, or are you going to close this off for good?
Well, I guess we'd be looking for some assistance from the town on what they think there, but so we were operating, Jeff, we were operating based on what we thought was our initial permit, which had the sign permit and had all the drawing and the discussion, and it in there, that's where the 6 cars comes up, and then it talks about the overflow part that the improved surface would be for 6 cars because there's plenty of room to do overflow parking to the east. It says something to that effect. So it was all presumed that if the 6 cars were, if it got too crowded, we'd park there. And so that's what we've done. That's how we've managed it to date. And it's been with the current situation, we just felt like it makes sense to improve it, put a fence around it, and really capture that parking, and then have better signs that say, if the lot's full, you got to leave. That's, I think, to me, that's our best way forward. Yeah.
Well,
I'm with Jeff. The abutters don't agree, and I asked the question earlier, what is the plan for this weekend? As we are heading into a nice weekend, and what is, you don't have a permit, so what is the plan for this weekend?
Well, BNRC has a permit before the select board right now. So, I guess the plan is to get through this process and then figure out from there what we do.
I'm not aware that you have a permit for the overflow parking lot.
no, it's what we're talking about right now.
Right.
Right, so.
It would seem to me that this discussion could go on forever and ever without a solution that's satisfactory to either party. So I'm kind of guessing that the interest in Hollow Fields is going to come more or less to a close with the weather approaching weather, November. And I do believe that it will kind of cool down a bit, shall we say, as the weekends get colder and the weather gets more miserable. So would it make sense to kick this can down the road for a while till we get some kind of an idea or two to figure out where we can go with this next, or do we want to make a decision tonight? What shall we do with this is the question I'm proposing. Okay. I'm kind of stuck on a fence on this right now because I don't think that approving this large area at this point in time is a great idea. And I do think that there are some things afoot that may be their fruition, and that's another parking lot, but that's not happening just yet. But time given it some time, and the fact that there's going to be a long winter, there may be something that comes of this in the spring, a solution. I'm not saying there certainly will be one, but there may be something moving forward that make everyone somewhat happy with this whole situation. So what's everyone's pleasure? Do we want to deal with this tonight, right now, and say yes or no, or do we want to kind of hold off and see what we can do with it in the future?
I'm inclined to hold off a decision, but I'm more focused on the sheer practicalities of whatever decision we get to. One, we do not have a police force available to the town of Richmond. We do not have it. One of the reasons is it's a real expense to have a police force for a small town like Richmond. Not having a police force means that we do not have the capability of controlling the parking area along Perry's Peak Road. One of the reasons for expanded parking is to take the traffic off Perry's Peak Road. If we continue the current permitted parking, whether it's 6 cars or 8 cars, or maybe probably 6 to 8 would be the maximum. We all know that people who drive to Hollow Fields and want to walk in nature's wonderland are going to park along Perry's Peak Road, the ones that cannot fit in the parking area. The only way that could be enforced would be to require the BNRC to have volunteers at the parking area who would turn people around and would walk up and down at perhaps some personal risk to tell people they cannot park on Perry's Peak Road. What we don't want are local residents taking up that burden because it's not fair to even ask them to do it. Sometimes I guess they have done it. But frankly, dealing with the public, when you give them disappointing news that they cannot park at a destination they may have driven an hour to get to, doesn't create a happy situation. One of the opportunities for deferring a decision on expanded parking is to spend a few months in the off season or the winter season to try to find another way to access the trailhead. It appears to me there are only 3 options. One is Route 20, which is quite some distance away. The second is Route 41, where practically speaking, there may not be property available, and 41 is heavily trafficked. So any parking would have to be off the road. And I drove it the other day. I didn't see a location for parking other than perhaps on the cemetery side. And that, I believe, some of that is town land. But that would mean anyone who wanted to go would have to cross over 41 and then find a way up to Holyfield. The third, and just from looking at a map, is whether there is access, and I believe there is a trail off Route 295 going north, which would be about a mile, I guess, to intersect with the southern loop of the trail that exists today. And that may not be a practical solution either. So the hard fact is there may not be an effective, enforceable decision here that would satisfy the residents who have legitimate concerns and satisfy the vision and the mission of the BNRC, which together with the Land Trust and the town of Richmond have really created this public park access that is beautiful and worthy of being preserved. And at the same time, we need to take into account the issues that the local residents are facing as well. I don't see an easy decision here. If we limit the parking as we have now to what has been approved, 6 or 8 cars, my guess is, and we perhaps can see what happens over the next few weekends before we get hard winter, people will continue to park on the road. I just don't see how we have, we're a small town. We don't have enforcement capabilities to prevent that. So I'd ask the neighbors to consider whether a larger parking area screened and identified in terms of perhaps 1-2-15 or so is preferable to the continued parking on Perry's Peak Road. Because practically speaking, those may be the only options that we're dealing with. I apologize, but if someone has another solution that can work, I'd be very interested in hearing it. But people saying, and I appreciate Jeff saying it and Mr. Moore saying it, we should have very limited parking, 6 cars or whatever fits in this area. That's fine. What happens to the 20 cars that come up and find that that parking area is filled? And we say it's filled, there's no parking on Perry's Peak Road. If all of those people would drive away, problem solved. But our experience has been they don't drive away. They park on the road, whether there's a no parking sign or not. And unless we have to call the state police, we have no effective way to enforce the no parking. And I'm not even sure, in the absence of a procedure that we have to adopt a no parking ordinance on that road, the state police would even enforce that. So I'm coming around to what Alan has suggested, that we defer consideration on the proposed application for a special permit. We live with the current situation, however it plays out over the next few weeks, and spend the winter months trying to come up with a solution. That's my very practical suggestion, which isn't going to satisfy anyone, but I haven't heard yet in the hour discussion a solution to the problem at this point.
Well, there is no solution to the problem that the neighborhood is facing, other than trying to limit the number of cars that are there. And making the parking lot bigger and bigger and bigger is not the solution. On other parking lots in town, we required a 50-foot setback from a property line. This red line shown along the Caligaris is 25 feet. So I've been just told. I would suggest that it be no closer than 50 feet. And when BNRC first asked about an overflow parking area, and they discussed it with our DPW, they showed, or they discussed about 15 feet beyond where that gray line is that you mentioned, Naren. And this one here is substantially more than 15 feet.
Well, I'm fine. I mean, I don't know what the right process is here. If you want us to withdraw the permit application, or if it just goes on hold. I just don't think this is doing nothing is a solution long term. I do think it will see less traffic this winter. I think the traffic, people will be coming back when the weather warms up, and they'll come on nice winter days as well, and as they should. I think that the lot is drawn. I realize it's a bit bigger, obviously, but it's not at all an unreasonable size lot for a 450 acre reserve. And the one that is there is smaller than most of the private homes on the road. So it is quite small. So I just feel like maybe this solution going forward is some sort of compromise. Maybe we pull it back to 50 feet from Calgary's line, and that still gives us another 30 feet of parking, and that would increase it, and that might get 80% of the days of overflow off the road. And then we could put in the screening and put in a fence, and really try and put in better signage and see if we can make this better for everybody. But I don't feel comfortable limiting in a permanent way to this size. I think it's just too small, and it's just going to be a continual problem, and it's just not an appropriate size for this lot. It's just not for this reserve. It's really should have been made larger from the start. But
why don't we try as an interim to take you up on that offer to move that line at 50 feet and put the barriers at 50 feet, not make any physical surface changes to that area, and just see how that works out for a while.
all right.
For the weekends, Roger,
Uh,
or all the time?
well, that's a good question. I would say,
Probably mostly an issue on the weekends, but we're not trying to increase traffic here. We're just trying to solve the problem. So, we can put,
well, to solve a problem, you have to have a definition of what the problem is. From your perspective, the problem is we don't have room for enough or more cars. That's not the problem. The problem is there's too many cars now. That's the problem. There's too many cars and people now. So it depends on how you define the problem. From BNRC's perspective, the problem is there's not enough parking. And
Jump in for a sec. I'm sorry. I've been listening with interest to what everybody says. This is Jenny Hansel from BNRC. And I just want to echo something Mackenzie said a little while ago, and what Narayan has been saying, which is we do not want to increase traffic at this property. We have been trying to be as creative as we can about discouraging people from going. We're putting it on our website and our app to, encourage people to go other places. And, we're trying to take that big picture approach to relieving the pressure there. People love this property. They're going to keep coming, but we're not scheduling walks. We're not bringing groups. We're not having hikes there. We're doing everything we can to direct traffic in other directions. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
And buses, once, Roger, this is Pat again. Once there was a bus that was brought in there. It hasn't happened since. We're not bringing buses up. We did one time. So I don't want you to think there's a parade of buses going up there. If there are, they're not BNRC. I don't think there are. So I just want to be careful not to make it seem like it's something else than it is. I understand it's a problem. I'm not denying that, but.
Advertising this fields in New York Times, I don't think discourages people from coming.
We weren't advertising.
Okay.
It was written up in the New York Times by someone as a place to hike, BNRC.
Right.
Yeah. Word gets out one way or another.
I had my hand up earlier. I just wanted to point out something earlier that I think I might have mentioned this to you, Jenny, earlier when we were talking in the parking lot. It doesn't really make sense to me that if you are actually actively pursuing, looking for another way into access for this property, that you would want to invest all this money in a new parking lot and privacy screening and be actively putting all this money into this parking lot. So the two things don't really jive to me, because I'm sure it would be a considerable expense for BNRC to incur to increase this parking lot and put in all this privacy screening. So, I'm not really, that would be a temporary thing if we're actually looking to move the trailhead elsewhere. So I just wanted to point that out, that I would prefer that you pursue the alternative rather than this one.
I was out there yesterday with Mackenzie hiking various options, looking for possible paths through. But as Narayan has said, it requires, working with other landowners who may or may not want to, to allow easements on their property, and that's beyond our control. We'll keep having those conversations, and we would like to solve this problem in the short term. And if it requires an additional investment down the road, we're your neighbors. We want to be as good neighbors as we possibly can.
I hear you.
When we spoke with Ryan, Pete and I, what we talked about was potentially switching the cars almost facing Calgary property. So you would have almost an L shape of cars versus just the straight facing into the field. That was before you mowed the entire section. But so in order to do that, then you would actually get more cars because it would come up the other way versus everybody facing the field. I don't know if that's still an option. Obviously, if that did become an option, the screening would definitely have to happen along Calgary's property line. So if Roger still wants to do a trial basis, you could approve the driveway permit that was presented today as a temporary basis with the modification of it being 50 feet from the Calgary property line, not 25. And then if you wanted to try it with the cars facing the Calgary property, you could probably fit more than if you did straight across towards the field.
I'm happy to try. That. It would all just be on the grass. So I think again that would only come into play on the busy weekends, and most times people would just pull in and park on the dirt. But I think we should try. Whatever you think we should try, we'll try it. I guess we can start with what Roger suggested. We can put cones at the 50-foot mark, and then we can put signs that ask people to pull into there, I think is what Danielle is suggesting. So happy to try that. See if that.
I was actually suggesting timbers at the 50-foot, not cones. Cones,
Yeah, thank you.
People move.
Well,
But anyhow, that is a compromise. Yes.
one option would be to do it for the remainder of the current season and look at it again in January, February, March, whatever, but only approve it for, let's say, the next 30 to 60 days to see how it works.
That's whatever you guys want to try here. We'll try it.
And Ryan, maybe we can look at some screening on the Calgary side regardless, because, not necessarily along the Perry's Peak frontage until we figure out what we're going to do, but it seems like that might make sense in any case. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great idea, and I'd like to be involved in that when you do have those discussions, because I have some ideas. I've done some screening myself, as you know.
Yep. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, I mean, it might make sense, regardless of what we end up with in terms of a parking lot.
Right.
Yeah, we can definitely plant some along our line there for sure.
Right. And we can talk to whoever wants to have input, I suppose, into what goes in there, as long as it's not gold plated. Something native.
Okay. So
I'm asking, have we reached a compromised test solution for the remainder of the fall season, and perhaps agree that we'll review this again in February and March, so that we agree on something for next summer? And the suggestion would be that we extend the overflow parking. And Danielle, you had that would be no closer than 50 feet to the Calgary property. And then, as I understand it, Danielle, you were suggesting that rather than that property be a rectangle, it would be some sort of an L-shaped property, but no closer than 50 feet to to the
No, no, it would be
Cavalieri
the
Cup.
same shape. It would just be the direction you put the cars. You would be able to fit more is what the thought process was.
All right, so looking at the plot plan, it appears that it's 70 feet from the center, from the cut to the driveway cut to the 50-foot line. And what Roger is suggesting that you have to back that up 25 feet. And so the extension would be 45 feet from the cut, if I've got my math correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll measure from Jeff's line, and we'll just measure out 50 feet. And then I think we've got some timbers in the barn there, so we can put something permanent down.
All right.
And then I think we'll take, Danielle, we'll take a look at what makes the most sense. I get what you're saying, whether or not it makes most sense to have them parked face towards that, or facing east or facing south. We'll maybe try it both ways, just with a few cars, and see what fits.
And you understand this is a temporary quote solution. It's for limited, we'd say for the next, I'm so open to suggestions. I'm thinking that, and I guess you do get snowshoe people and winter hikers coming in.
Yeah, we don't typically plow over onto the grass, so I'm not sure we would do that. I think it's really more about the next 3 or 4 weeks. See how it goes.
We could make this a 60-day permit and review it at the end of that time to see whether it has achieved organized parking area, but more importantly, whether there's a material and significant reduction in parking along the road.
Okay, I think that works for, we're certainly happy to try that. So I'm sure everybody's ready to move on. I don't know, does this require a vote, or are we just?
It requires a vote.
Okay.
Your motion needs to be to approve the driveway permit from BNRC for 60 days with the conditions of no gravel extension, and that the temporary parking area be moved 50 feet from the Cavalieri property line.
Please incorporate Danielle's suggested motion into the minutes, and I move that we accept her recommendation.
And this would be for a 60-day permit?
For a 60-day permit.
Where does 60 days bring us?
Well,
January.
brings us to early January.
I'd say till the end of the year. Close enough.
Yes. Let's just do for 2020.
All right, until January 31, December 30, that was 31, 2020. So that's my motion, and I thank Danielle for framing it as well as she did.
I'll second that. The Selectmen's vote will be Hanson, aye.
Wilson, aye.
Manzolini, reluctantly, aye.
It's your idea, Roger. I think we have exhausted the conversation on this particular
Time to move on.
issue.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you.
That take us to Balderdash?
Yes, I say that. All right, let's go to Balderdash. I would like some clarification on the project description on the back of the page, the first page, which is the permit itself. a little vague on the project description. And I'm looking at the line that says, the events will be held behind and to the north of the existing barn on the property. I would like it to be a little bit more specific, because that's pretty vague. I'd like to have that a little bit more, a little better explanation of that than I see written in front of me.
Selectman Hanson, I'm not quite clear what you're looking at. We have recently submitted a modification of the farm function permit, which I don't believe has reached your desk yet, because it has to go through 2 weeks of public comment or public review. So I'm not quite clear what you're referring to.
Okay, so what this is just the amendment that they're applying for. What we're going to do is schedule a hearing for his amendment of his special permit. And we will schedule that for December 2nd, Christian.
Okay.
Go on the paper for 2 weeks before I can have a public hearing. So December 2nd,
Yep.
earliest I can have it. Follow me on that one.
So Selectman Hanson, what we are doing is we fully recognize that having big tent events in the vineyard, in the property with a lot of noise just don't work. And those are going to stop. So what I want to do is have those events be in the barn. We want to refurbish the barn and fix the barn, and that's what the events will be. So right now, the way the farm function permit is written is that the events are not allowed to be held in the barn, which honestly, it was completely an oversight on my part, and I wrote the permit incorrectly. So what Danielle is referring to and what I have submitted is that I would like further farm function permits to be allowed to be held in the barn once it is refurbished. And that will completely mitigate many, many noise issues.
And so the discussion items on the agenda for tonight is discussion of steps to take regarding the Balderdash entertainments and permits. So last week we talked about potentially creating an entertainment policy to regulate during his normal business hours. Our town council feels that while that still pertains to them, she feels that it would be easier to go ahead and address their business hours during under their farm function permit. So what the plan now is, because it's all going to be wrapped into one, and some of the comments from the board had been that they would like to see the events be held in the barn. And since Christian has filed his amendment to the special permit, the next step would be that we can propose changes that you would want to do as we were going to do under the 1-year review, and then incorporate those into the special permit while simultaneously hearing the amendment. Excuse me, because that way you don't have to have multiple public hearings. You can kind of type.
Danielle, you referred to the special permit, but did you mean the farm function?
Farm function permit is a special permit.
Okay, but there's another fence, but in this case, we're
So
talking
there
about.
is an events permit, which is not a special permit. And then there is a definition of a special permit, which falls under different sections of your zoning bylaw. The farm function permit is indeed a special permit.
Just a question, Christian. The new language, and I see frankly the old language, so this is the clarification, says that the events will be held, and you want to say in the barn, and I can't imagine we're going to object to that, but we'll see. I don't think we should. Or north of the existing barn. North of the existing barn includes almost every inch of your property line, all the way to the end of the parking area, up towards Pittsburgh.
So I have to interrupt.
Yep. And so I can certainly clarify that in writing with the board. But my view is that having large tented events, after hours, a lot of noise, 150 people is just not going to work anymore. So that's not what we want to do. what we want to do is having after hours events in the barn or in the winery, which we've already worked out with other events, to have noise, dancing, etc. in the tasting room. And that's where we want to have the events. So we can certainly clarify that, and I can write that up to be more specific, but we are not, we've already stopped advertising, having tented events, noisy events in the vineyard that create noise for the public.
All right, well, I appreciate what you're saying. It may be, and Danielle is a little concerned that we're now discussing a topic that we should.
We're discussing the amendment, which we cannot discuss right now, other than to say that we are going to schedule for the special permit amendment on December 2nd.
All right.
And at that time, we will incorporate the other sound mitigation conditions we may want to impose on the current farm function special permit.
Fair enough.
Sure. Yep.
Our minutes will reflect the direction that we have received from our town administrator. Thank you.
And we have no events in the vineyard, noisy events, tenant events between now and then. So that will be perfect.
Okay. So we can kick that can down the road, Mr. Chair.
I really appreciate you being responsive to the ongoing complaints from the neighborhood, Christian.
Thank you. And just to be clear to everyone, I believe we're talking about the farm function permit. And in 2020, we have had very few farm function activities. We've had a total of, roughly 10 off the top of my head. 4 have been concerts, which we have already indicated to the board that we will not do in the future. And those are concerts that are more than 3 people. And we'll come to you for permits for that. The other ones have been, it's a corporation that wants to have a, small event in the middle of the day, or it's a very small wedding, 15 people in the winery. So at this point, what we're looking to come to the board with is a modification of the farm function permit to do really nothing other than what we've been licensed to do. So we don't feel there's been any violation of any permit that we've had. So we just want that to be recognized by the board.
I know your property was divided into 2 properties. Is the barn part of the winery, or is it part of the house property?
The barn is part of the personal property.
Okay, so does that complicate just the mechanics of what we're talking about here?
It does not, no.
Okay. Okay.
Because the farm function permit, as it's written, says that it's both the property that's being discussed as well as the adjacent property, and together that has to be 15 acres. And so between the winery property and the personal property, that's more than 15 acres. So together it's kind of one. So we're talking about it's all one and the same, basically.
Okay. Now, us saying, or you saying that future events, noise-making events or music-producing events will be in the barn or the winery. Is that the same as saying they will not be outside? I mean.
Yeah, to be very clear, we have farm function events, which are outside of normal business hours. Those events, as I mentioned, have been roughly 10 this year. There have been 4 concerts when we have absolutely, notified the board. We've had, bands that have been certainly making noise. We've had other events that we have not notified the board because it's been very small. As I said, it's been 15 people for a corporate event, but those have been the farm function events. Outside of that, we do our normal business operations. And by right, we have had one person playing a guitar, one person, maybe two people playing a guitar and singing. So those are not part of the farm function permit. The farm function permit, it's only outside of normal business hour activity.
Okay. Have the complaints, the complaints have been associated with noise, and whether that's a farm function permitted noise or a normal business permitted noise, they can't differentiate between them, to the best of my knowledge. Is the noise problem being mitigated completely?
I would say there's always a complaint, no matter what the activity is. And often the complaint is around 45 decibels in the area of the complaint. So it is not a sizable complaint, in my opinion.
Christian, we're going to have a discussion on that shortly, not tonight, but soon. Let me point out that our town council has given us an opinion that you do not have the right in normal business hours, the right by right for music and entertainment. We'll be guided by our town council's opinion, and we plan to have that discussion with you at our next, I believe our, oh no, in December, at our December meeting.
I'm sure the town council has pointed out that under section 183A, that our license is not mentioned in that requirement for a permit.
So she disagrees with you on a couple matters, Christian. So on we have moved away from section 183 entertainment license. We're not asking you to get any kind of licenses under that, because the way the MGL is written is a little vague, although the interpretation was written to include all 138 licenses, not just the section 12. But the other section that she believes is that under our bylaw, a farm function is for any event or concert. It does not just say that it is for after hours. So one of the board will most likely look into incorporating into your farm function permit when we do the review and amendment is to regulate what concerts you are allowed to hold during normal hours.
And I totally appreciate that. I have no doubt town council has done extensive research on the definition of a farm function as defined by the town of Richmond. And currently the way the town defines a farm function is basically based on a for fee activity. And so the way we have music during our normal operating hours is not for a fee. So we are not subject to that requirement.
Disagrees with your interpretation, so we'll take that into the conversations on December 2nd.
And it's not my interpretation. It's exactly what's written in the town bylaw. So.
But I know that you know this, Christian, that everything is open to interpretation. So.
Oh boy, yeah. That's why we need lawyers. We got to interpret everything. So that's why we're waiting for a presidential nomination here. Here we go. So, but honestly, the select board and Danielle, the way it's written is that it does say fee paid or for a fee for any farm function. So that's why that's not applicable to us.
Christian. So I'm not disagreeing with you what it says. What I'm saying is what she is trying to say is that the intent of the bylaw was never to allow anybody to hold as many concerts as they want with absolutely no guidance or input from the town whatsoever, which is why she has interpreted it slightly different. However, I I'm not an attorney, so I'm not about to get into an argument with you on it. I'm just telling you what that,
Okay, as far as I know, Christian's not an attorney
So-
either, so,
yeah.
I raise my hand. I am not an attorney either.
okay, so we settled that. In any case, we do plan to discuss it at the December
Second,
2nd meeting, so I'm sure you will be joining us at that time.
Yep. And I would just like to make clear to the selectmen, certainly there's been a lot that's happened over the past year, a lot that's changed. I mean, it's been a horrible year for us with all that's been going on. I know there's been noise. Number one, in terms of concerts with 3+ members, I've already said, I think, to 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 of you, we will come to you for any special permits to do that again. So we're not attributing that to by right in any way whatsoever, not even on the farming function permit. So that's out. So
I think we will be able to agree on reasonable noise mitigation steps that we would like to see put into effect for next season. And
okay,
let's have that meeting in
December 2nd. Okay, sounds good.
All right, thank you.
I think we're up to town administrator's report, Mr. Chairman.
You're there.
we're gonna skip over that.
Okay. And I would move approval of the minutes for October 28, 2020. Minutes submitted some comments. They've been incorporated in the revised set. And unless there are any other comments on the minutes, I move approval of those minutes.
I have read the corrected minutes and I'll second the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Wilson, aye.
Hanson, aye.
Manzolini, aye.
All right.
Done.
Is there any public comment? I think we probably exhausted everyone who's still on the call.
I'm not sure, but I think everyone had a chance. Holly has something.
Thank goodness we have some.
Hi, I would just like to comment that there's a lot of echo with Danielle, especially with Danielle speaking. There's a lot of echo. Is the microphone attached into the town hall when she?
So
Because Roger is easy to hear and understand, but
Holly,
Hold on.
yeah.
yeah, everybody can hear.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
no problem. All right, just wanted to check.
So Holly, can you hear me?
Yes.
We spent over 2.5 hours today trying to get the sound set up the way we usually do. And one of the cords that we normally use that allows us to use microphones so you can hear us is not working. And it is not a cord that is easily available to find other places. So we had to improvise tonight.
Oh, okay, I understand. There's echo with both Al and Neil as well, but it's not as bad as it is with, there are a lot of words we can't understand when you speak, Danielle. So it just so you know that it is a problem.
Is that a directional mic on the chair?
It may not be.
In which case you are 90 degrees and we're almost head on. I will try to fix it for next time, Holly, promise.
Okay, I don't think I'm the only person that has the problem, but
That's the first time anybody's ever said that they didn't have trouble hearing me, Holly, so thank you.
May I make a comment? Miles Garfinkel, from where Neil is, yes, I can't understand what's going on, and from where Danielle is speaking, I've missed almost all of what's been said because of the echo and the quality. So good luck on fixing it.
All right, well, thank you for alerting us to the problem. Alan and I are almost directly facing the mic. Danielle is at 90 degrees, and that could be part of the problem.
It's a big echo. I don't know what room they're in.
Just FYI, for those that have zoomed in, I too am having trouble hearing from the town hall.
All right.
I have the same issues that you guys are having.
Why did they move to the town hall? Why did they, it worked very well with them all home.
Well, we're trying to get back to normal.
Whatever that used to be.
Let's hope we can do it.
In fact, I would be at the town hall tonight, except I got called out of town.
Selectmen members?
I'm gonna ask, we have anything else report?
Chief?
More report, okay. Selectmen's matters. Are there any matters, Neil?
Not for me tonight.
Roger, any matters?
No. Yes and no. I don't want to bring up anything.
I have none that are pressing, so I think we'll just call it a night.
All right, move we adjourn, Mr. Chairman, at 8:17.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The one thing that I did want to bring up was to just thank Danielle for making Halloween special, and anybody that was involved with that.
I second that, and I think, let's see if we can start that tradition. It's a safe way. We had 40 or 50 kids, and it's a safe way to celebrate in daylight in the parking area. So I'd like to see us do that again next year.
Yeah, it would be nice to let that become a Richmond tradition.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I think Roger, did you agree we should adjourn?
I had that problem that everybody else is having. You said something, Neil, but I'm not sure what.
Motion to adjourn, we need your
Oh,
vote.
yeah, I'm in favor, or
Good.
second.
We're done.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everybody. Thank you. Good night, Clarence.
Good night, Clarence.
Yeah.